Although we don't often talk about France, today we want to cover some immigration options that you can consider if you are thinking about relocating to this European Union country. Hi, my name is Sadife. I lead the strategy team here at Nomad Capitalist, where we help high net worth individuals diversify their options and go where they're treated best. A very common topic that we talk about is the European Union. A lot of countries, of course, in the EU have great immigration programs, golden visas, the citizenship in Malta. But France is not that often talked about. It's not that famous, maybe because it doesn't have really a straightforward process, but it's still a good option for people that actually want to relocate there and live in the country. Let's firstly start with the residency permits. The first one that I want to talk about is for people who want to visit France, but just want to extend their visitor stay. There is an option to extend the visitor stay by applying for the visitor residency or the extended visitor residency permit for foreigners in France. In order to qualify for this, and of course also to maintain it, you need to make sure that you're not working when you move to France. So you just really need to be there as a visitor or tourist. And you need to have enough income or funds to actually maintain yourself while you are in France. And that amount is just over 16,000 euros. So about 16,200 euros for 1 year period. So that income for a single person can be from annuities, pension, maybe you have some real estate investments outside of France and you're receiving income like passive income through your real estate investments. That can also be used. You can provide bank statements with this particular income that you're receiving in order to strengthen your claim for this particular extended visitor residency permit. What you also need to show proof of is that you have an available place to you in France. So you need to either have a property rented out or purchased. So this is really taken into account because they want to see that at the time that you're living in France, you have again, a property available to you. So if these conditions are met, you can apply for a 1-year residency, which can be renewed annually. Again, this is not a working visa, so you cannot really work in France under this type of residency permit. This is just, again, an extended visitor where you can live in France off of a passive income that you're receiving from outside of the country. Another type of residency is the long stay visa or the type D visa. Now, this visa is typically given to people for different reasons. So if you want to move to France to be with family members, this can be a type of visa that you get. If you want to move to France for like professional activities, this is also a type of visa that you can get. So it's not really a one visa just for one specific person. It actually applies to a few different types of people that have different reasons that they want to move to France. This particular visa is given from the French consular authorities. So you need to make the application, of course, collect the documents, make the application, and it will be issued based on your specific requirements and what you're looking for to do when you go to France. The third type of residency that you can get in France is more geared towards retired people. So if you want to retire to France, you can actually get a retirement visa or retirement residency in France. The good thing about this particular residency is that your spouse can also be included and you can actually both retire in France if certain conditions are met. One thing to note, and I know we're talking about immigration to France, and maybe if you've already thought about moving to France, you might have taken into account the tax. But if you are moving to France and staying there for more than 6 months per year, you will be treated as a tax resident. And the personal income tax in some cases goes as high as 45%. So this is something really that you need to consider before you make a decision whether you're going to move to France or not. One point that I want to make here is that usually the 6-month time frame is a good indicator to determine whether you're a tax resident or not, but that doesn't mean that it is the only indicator. So sometimes even if you spend a bit less time in France than 6 months, but you have other ties such as bank accounts or you have a property available to you, you have income from France, that might be enough for you to be treated as a tax resident. So you should proceed with caution if you want to move to France. If you're not ready to relocate to a high tax country, then maybe you need to reconsider your options and consider other countries in the European Union where you might have a lower tax bill. Moving forward, we have the Profession Libérale visa. Pardon my pronunciation. This is a type of visa that you can actually use to move to France if you do not want to stay there for long periods of time. So if you want to maintain this visa just as a temporary residency and not switch it to a permanent one, it doesn't have a minimum physical presence requirement, which is of course very convenient for people that want to travel a bit more and cannot commit to staying in France for long periods of time. So this particular visa, initially it is issued for 12 months and it can be renewed. After you renew it the second time, you can actually qualify for a 4-year permit, which makes it a bit more convenient, for people that do not want to go through the hassle of renewing their residency every year. Now, although this is, again, a temporary residency, and for the temporary residency, you do not need physical presence, if you want to change it to a permanent residency, which you can, after maintaining the temporary one for 5 years, you can, again, switch to a permanent residency permit, but you need to make sure that if you want to qualify for a permanent residency, you need to not be absent for more than 10 months on an annual basis from France. So when you switch it from a temporary to a permanent residency permit, of course, this requires you to pay taxes in France, as I've mentioned earlier. If you're spending time in France, you need to make sure that you are up to date with your taxes and you're paying them on an annual basis. After 5 years of holding that permanent residency permit, you can actually apply for naturalization in France. When the time for naturalization comes, you need to make sure that you need to speak the language. You need to pass some history tests. So at that time, it's not just a matter of, oh, I have the documents, I've spent enough time, I'm going to apply. You actually need to show proof that you are integrated in the culture and you have actually lived in France and you have made it the center of your vital interests. So what does it take to qualify for this particular permit? Well, this is a business type of visa. So you need to establish a company or a sole proprietorship in France. Now, what we have seen is that when you establish a company in France, it might be more difficult for foreigners because you need to have a bank account, which in this case, a sole proprietorship might be a bit easier as a starting point. So you establish that structure, you essentially have a business plan, and then with that business plan, you need to apply to the authorities to get the business plan approved in order to subsequently get the residency. So when you've established this business in France, it cannot just, of course, you need to provide a business plan. The company cannot be dormant. What is important to note is that you have to show proof that that business plan or that company will bring you a salary of 20,000 euros annually. It is important because unless you prove this, there might be a risk of the company or the business plan just not being approved. The Passport Talent Business Path visa is another residency or visa that is more geared towards business people, where of course you need to have a company incorporated in France or a sole proprietorship. And for this type of residency, you can actually in the beginning get a temporary residency permit, which is going to be valid anywhere from 1 to 4 years. And of course, after the validity period is over, you can renew it similarly to the previous residency permit that I've mentioned. For this particular route, profitability of the company is not really required, but you need to make sure that you, for renewal purposes specifically, you need to make sure that you provide proof that the business has been launched. So physical presence requirement is pretty much non-existent, again, unless you want to go for permanent residency or you want to naturalize down the line. But just to maintain the temporary residency, technically you do not need to spend much time in France. So for the permanent residency, just a small reminder, if you want to qualify for the permanent residency, you can do so, but you need to show proof that you haven't been absent for more than 10 months from France. So the physical presence is very, very important if you want to switch it to permanent residency permit. For this particular residency, you can include your family, so your spouse and kids can also benefit from this route. There are a few options when it comes to how you are creating the company and what type of company you are creating in order to get this residency permit. So we have 4 options in total. Some are not really that great, so let me walk you through those. So the first option is investing in an existing business in France, which is not really the best one. I think the other options are definitely a bit better and match more people. So for example, the second one is creating of a new business in France, which is by far the best one, and I'll get to that in a bit. We have third option, which is French tech visa for startup founders. And then the fourth option is the investor option. So let me walk you through the second one, or the creation of new business in France. As mentioned, creating a new business in France is definitely the best option, and I'll show you why. So firstly, you need to make sure that before applying, you have 5 years of experience, of business experience. And then you need a master's degree or an equivalent to master's degree, which could be like in engineering or any profession that you think the business is going to be involved in. And then of course you would need a business plan. You need to invest 30,000 euros in that business, and also on top of that you need to show proof that you can sustain yourself while living in France, and the annual amount that you need to show proof of is about 20,000 euros. It's very important to note that the nature of the business cannot just be anything. It cannot be tourism, so it cannot be like a restaurant or a hotel or something similar. Apart from that, of course, you cannot have convictions, so you need to have a clean criminal record before applying. Usually you can show proof of this, for example, like an FBI report if you're from the US. If you meet the physical presence requirements for any of the options that I've mentioned and you stay consecutively in France for a number of years, then you can also, of course, apply for citizenship by naturalization. Keep in mind, it's a complex process. It's not the easiest one to do. So you need to, of course, collect the documents, show proof that you have lived in France, and then make the application. And usually you need to wait for, like, I want to say at least about a year until you can get the approval. So, but it is an option, citizenship by naturalization, it is an option in France. So you cannot qualify for a fast-track citizenship just by investing in the country. So that's not an option in France, unfortunately. But you do have, of course, an option if you're a descendant of a French citizen. You can apply for a French citizenship by descent. That's an option. Or if you're married for at least 4 years to a French national, you can apply for citizenship by marriage. So as you can see, even though it's not really, a popular option, France actually does have quite a lot of routes to qualify for either residency or subsequently get the passport there. So it is a good option if you want access to the Schengen area and to the EU, but also if you want a very strong passport that you can use to travel pretty much anywhere in the world. It is important to note, though, that for France, if you've seen recent news, there was talks that they want to impose citizenship-based taxation, which is what the US is doing now. That law, of course, didn't pass, but it is something to keep in mind that if they started talking about it, it might be something that will be applicable years later. So overall, a very good passport, but not the most straightforward process to get that passport or the residency. And this is the reason why we have this plan creation process here at Nomad Capitalist. We have a specific timeline that we go through each of your goals, what you want to accomplish, what concerns you, and we create a plan together that would accomplish those goals and would essentially provide solutions to your concerns. So if you want to learn more about what options are the best ones for you, you can go and apply at nomadcapitalist.com/apply to become a client. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment for any new content that you want to see, anything that might be interesting to you, and we'll make sure to keep that in mind for future videos. This is Sadife Destani Mehmet. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.
This is how to live like a king in Medellin.
This is Medellin like you've never seen it before.